Are electric cars actually better than diesel or petrol cars? Well, this is a debatable question. One could say diesel or internal combustion engine vehicles, ICEV, have more range and they can be cheaper. Others say EVs are better because they are more efficient, quieter, and environmentally friendly. But is this actually true? Are EVs better for the environment? Most people would say yes, because EVs don't have any tailpipe emissions, and they only use electricity. But doesn't the production of electricity produce emissions, just like an ICEV? Well, let's compare the emissions from these two types of vehicles to find which is actually better for the environment. To start, let's look at the greenhouse gas emissions released from producing both types of vehicles. An EV produces a lot more emissions than an ICEV during the production phase of the vehicles. This is primarily due to the battery, which accounts for about 38% of the total greenhouse gas emissions released from a mid-sized EV. Without looking at the battery, both types of vehicles have very similar greenhouse gas emissions. When taking into account the battery, the size of the battery is very important. For example, a battery from a mid-sized EV will have a lot lower emissions compared to a battery from a large EV, such as a Tesla. Adding these numbers to the graph, we can see that EVs have much larger greenhouse gas emissions during the production phase, especially larger EVs. This means that ICEVs would be a lot better for the environment if cars were single-use items, but they are not, which leads us into the next section. In this stage, EVs produce zero tailpipe emissions. Instead, they use electricity, but electricity comes from many different sources, some of which do produce greenhouse gas emissions. So, do zero tailpipe emissions actually help the environment? Well, EVs can get their fuel or electricity from big power plants that are designed to convert fossil fuels into electricity. These power plants are a lot more efficient than ICEVs. Not only this, but the individual components in EVs, like the battery, motor, and transmission, are more efficient than the components in an ICEV. All this results in EVs being able to convert 70 to 90% of their electricity into movement. ICEVs, on the other hand, only convert 10 to 15% of their energy into movement. Looking at the numbers for this stage, an EV produces 108 grams of CO2 emissions per kilometer. A mid-sized ICEV produces 233 grams of CO2 emissions per kilometer. This shows how during the use phase, EVs are better than ICEVs. Larger luxury EVs are even better. In the future, this stage will also become more environmentally friendly for EVs. This is because the average electricity mix used by an electric car will become cleaner, due to more renewable energy sources and less fossil fuels. Combining the data from both the use and production stage, we can create a graph. This graph shows us that after roughly 30,000 kilometers or just 2 years of driving, an electric car would release less total greenhouse gas emissions than an ICEV. After this 2-year period, the EV will become more environmentally friendly, and by the end of both vehicles' lifetimes, the electric car would have in total released 35% less greenhouse gas emissions. These numbers change when looking at larger 100 kWh battery vehicles. For such large EVs, it takes 85,000 kilometers or 5.5 years of driving for the electric car to have released less greenhouse gas emissions. This still is not too bad because the average lifetime of a car is 180,000 kilometers. And by the end of the lifetime of a large EV, it would have still released 27% less greenhouse gas emissions. All this means that as long as electric cars are driven till the end of their lifetime, they will produce less greenhouse gas emissions than a similar sized ICEV. In the future, it is very likely that electric cars will become even better for the environment. This is because the world will move away from fossil fuels, meaning that on average, the creation of electricity will not be producing as much greenhouse gas emissions. This will result in not only the use phase of EVs becoming cleaner, but also the production and refining phases, as they are very energy-intensive processes that require a lot of electricity. Diesel cars can also make a lot of noise, and studies show that long-term exposure to road noise is linked to a wide range of health issues. including sleep disturbance, annoyance, and negative effects on the cardiovascular system. The greenhouse gas emissions from ICEVs results in air pollution, which also has negative health effects, such as heart disease and lung cancer. The emissions also result in global warming, which will raise sea levels and increase the frequency, magnitude, and duration of droughts and hurricanes. All of this does not mean that electric cars are perfect and solve all the problems. They still have many flaws, but are a step in the right direction. I think we can all agree that using a 1-ton object to transport 75 kilograms won't be the most environmentally friendly. Biking, walking, or even the bus is just better.